Hey friends, glad to have you back. Today I want to talk about getting past that relationship, overcoming a past love relationship, and moving on with our life. What we should do, what we typically do, and how to really change things and get ourselves back on target and find what we're really looking for in our life. You know, we have a tendency of doing two things after a breakup. We either mope, right? We either mope or we rebound, right? That's normally what we do. And when we mope, what do we do when we mope? Well, when we mope, we think about the relationship, we get sad, we get depressed, and what ends up happening after we mope long enough is we end up romancing the situation and we start remembering all the great things that happened in the relationship and none of the bad stuff. And so many of us end up doing what? We either text or call or go over to their house, and normally what happens? We get back together for a period of time and we offset the inevitable and then eventually break up again. And many of us, instead of moping, we do the opposite. We do the rebound. Instead of thinking about what happened and lamenting about that and what have you, we jump right into the next relationship as fast as we can because we don't want to be by ourselves. We don't want to deal with thinking about the relationship, and we just want to move on and get going because time is of the essence. Now, I found that both of these don't work. Okay, the concept of moping around and romancing the relationship usually tends to move us back into that same relationship that wasn't working. When we rebound, we have a tendency of getting into another relationship and we haven't even figured out what happened on the previous relationship. We don't understand about our own baggage and issues, and we don't really grow from that previous relationship. Instead, we run into the next one, and basically we have like a big run-on sentence of a relationship, one after the other, after another, after another. And eventually we realize after a long period of time that we really don't know ourselves and we really don't understand why this pattern continues to happen in our life. So how do we deal with overcoming a past relationship? What can we actually do instead of those two options to better our life and to eventually find someone that we can live with and perhaps be together for the rest of our life? I mean, it's a question many of us are interested in. Many people want to get married. They want to live with someone for the rest of their life. They want to be happy. They want to have companionship, and that's normal. So how do we find that? And how do we move past the last divorce or breakup and figure out who we are and what we need in our life or what we want? Okay, so let's talk about this, because I figured this out. Years ago, I went through a really, really crappy relationship. And I had several crappy relationships leading up to this other crappy relationship. And, you know, this was one that I would never want to repeat. Most of the people I dated, I really like as people, just not to get married to or to stay with. And this last person, I love them. I don't necessarily really want to hang out with them or see them. But it was a tremendously painful relationship. And when I finally got out of it and stepped back, I mean, yes, I would have to say that they were more to blame than I was, and I think all of us can agree that one person's more to blame than the other, but I obviously brought something to the table, and I also brought my own baggage to the table, and then I had to actually look deep inside and ask myself, why did I actually choose this person to date? Why did I choose this person to move in with? What was I thinking in my mind? What was going through my head that made this look like the right choice? And this is where I want to start in this conversation. Okay, so the first thing is that when we break up, we have to begin by accepting our part in the situation, okay? We got to accept it. I had to accept my part in the situation. I had to accept my part of why I chose that relationship. Was it acceptance? Was it wanting to be valued? Was it wanting to fit in? Was it wanting not to be alone, okay? And I think oftentimes we don't accept our part of the responsibility. They might have been difficult people, they might have been overwhelming, but we don't accept the part that we played in staying in that relationship. Oftentimes, it could be derived from the fact that we pretty much override our intuition, and we didn't think about our gut, or we let go of our gut instinct because of what? Because of financial security, because of possible fame, that they were famous, or because they were just doggone hot. And in these situations, we overlook the reality of the situation. Do we get along? Do we value the same things, right? Do we understand one another? Are we on the same level, or are we not? And so when we step back from that and we take responsibility for entering the relationship, we then need to take some time to get to know ourselves. Anytime we're in a relationship, we're really putting most of our energy and time into that other person, right? We're dating that other person. We're taking time to cook food for that other person, spend time with that other person. But we need to take time to figure out what we want in our lifetime, what we want around us, what we won't deal with, what we want to live with, what we won't live with. And we got to go inward to find that. And that begins with dating ourselves. And I know that sounds odd. But remember when you were dating and you would go to the grocery store and you'd pick up food and you'd get stuff to make dinner, and perhaps you got home and you went on Apple TV and you found a movie, or you went on Netflix and found a movie that you wanted to watch, right? And you had it all set up, and you had a bottle of wine, and you had the glasses set up, and everything was perfect, and you did this. Well, think about doing that for yourself. And the reason why it's important, okay, because you're like, well, why would I want to do that? Because I remember I fought this a million times when I was trying to basically date myself, because I was looking for any way out. I wanted to get out of the house. I wanted to meet people. I mean, literally, my phone was like an appendage. Like it was part of my right hand. It was almost like surgically implanted. And I wanted anybody to call me to do anything to offset this time in my life that I was wanting to spend time with me, but I was wanting for anything else to come up, anything else so that I could take my mind off of it. But I realized that it was really important for me to step back and to begin to understand what I stand for and who I am. I wrote a book called The 10-Day Challenge to Live Your True Life, and in chapter 5 or day 5, it's all about you, right? And it's trying to figure out who you are. Like, what do you value? What's most important in your life? What do you want to have in your life? And for example, values being, do you value family? Do you value career? Do you value spirituality? Do you value purpose? Trying to figure out what that means and how you integrate that into your day-to-day life, because that's really important when you're out there looking for somebody to be with, or meeting people for that matter. If they don't have kind of the same direction and purpose and value, you're going to clash and you're not going to see eye to eye. But more than that, they're not going to ultimately respect what you're doing and see the value, and vice versa. Do you see what I'm saying? You'll kind of be at cross purposes. And so that really helps to really define what's important to you, and are you living true to your values, or are you living antithetical to your values? When you're living antithetical to your values, you want something, but you're doing the opposite, right? So for example, a good example of that is when I have clients in my office that they care about their marriage and family, but yet they have a couple of people on the side that they're seeing, okay? That's really antithetical to the value of family. I understand that people can make interesting choices, and I understand that it can be hard to be monogamous in certain situations. However, if you do value marriage at the top of your value system, you got to figure out, you either have to change your actions as far as not stepping outside the marriage, or you need to change your value of marriage being top priority. Maybe your top priority is your children, not your marriage, or something different from that. So thinking about that and actually living true to your values, not only in word, but also in action. Like I was saying earlier, the last breakup that I had was pretty bad. And I really needed to take time to really get to know myself, right? And I needed to take away that baggage and figure out what to do. And so what I did was, in that time that I was spending on my own, and I wasn't just going to Wendy's to pick up a freaking burger or something like that. I was actually going and picking up food to make for myself. I wasn't standing at the kitchen counter and like sucking down the food and praying that somebody called me. I was actually sitting down, eating, having a little small glass of wine, and actually making or watching a movie that I could watch and preparing that night for myself. The next step that I realized that I had to do is I had to let go of that phone, okay? And that was painful. That phone, I've had a phone since high school, for God's sakes. And so taking that phone out of my hand was really tough. And I was so used to looking at it, to texting people back, to responding back, that I had to purposely leave my phone. And eventually it got easier and easier, to the point where at night before I was going to bed, I used my phone as my alarm clock. I couldn't find it. I know. It was wild. It was weird. I would find it like in the kitchen next to the stove when I had been cooking, or I might find it on the side of the counter or in the bathroom, something. But it was really cool, because for the first time I was actually getting to spend time with myself, taking myself out of my comfort zone, which is using technology to derail myself from learning who I am, taking myself out of my comfort zone by not surrounding myself by 15 people so I drown out my own voices inside, taking out of my comfort zone and actually spending time on me and getting to know myself. And I know that sounds weird, but for most of us, we don't know who we are. We rarely take time to listen to who we are, think about who we are, ask ourselves what we want. We spend time with everybody else around us, talking to them, finding out what they want. You know what I'm saying? Trying to make ourselves look cool so they'll like us, so they'll accept us. Trying to make ourselves look sexy enough so so-and-so wants to date us. We don't think about the fact that we need to be right with us so that we can find someone else that's right with themselves, which, you know what you say, two whole people make a great relationship, not two half people, right? We have to be whole individuals that love ourselves to go into a relationship to meet somebody that they actually love themselves too, right? Because otherwise, if we're a half and they're a whole, we're not going to understand them, and vice versa. They're not going to understand where we're coming from. They're not going to understand our values. And again, another failed relationship. And I know often in the show I talk about perspective, right? Because my show on the radio is Live Your True Life Perspectives, and it's about finding a new perspective in life, right? Seeing things from a different angle, seeing things from a different perspective, changing our old thought patterns. And so one of the things that I changed is I changed my perspective on being on my own. And that went a long way to me valuing myself. And being on my own wasn't bad. I used to think that it was bad, it scared me, I didn't want to be on my own, and it would scare me just to spend time on my own, but then all of a sudden it got easier and easier and easier because I wasn't scared to kind of be on my own and be in my own groove and accept my own self, like feeling good in my own skin. I mean, we have a tendency of overlooking ourselves all the time, and it's not until the end of our life that we go, oh my God, I never really knew what I wanted or who I am or what I stand for, and I never spent real time with myself. And like I say on many videos and all the time to my friends, you come in this world on your own and you leave on your own. So that means that the relationship with ourselves is probably the most meaningful, hardest to figure out, deepest, and coolest relationship that we'll ever have. Another thing that's interesting is as the time went by, when I was spending time with myself, it became very therapeutic, but I also began to enjoy the time. I enjoyed spending time on my own. I enjoyed having some self-care that I hadn't had. You know, like taking time to watch a movie, taking time to read that book that I wanted to read, taking time to take like a really great bath with like like those bath bombs and stuff like that, which I would have never done in the past. Like actually taking time to take care of myself went a long way. And that was something that I hadn't really experienced. That shows self-love as well. And that goes a long way to just feeling really good about yourself. And it was interesting, you know, as I went through the process, I learned what makes me tick. I learned the things about me, the things that were important, the things that I wanted if I was going to find another person in my life, and what I was going to accept and what I wasn't really going to accept as well. And when I finally felt ready to move on, and this was about, I know this sounds crazy, but this was almost like 9 months to 11 months time, and I never expected it to go that long. I thought I was going to take a couple of days away from the dating scene, and I was going to be like amazing and reinvigorated and all that stuff. Well, it was several months later, and I didn't go into the process saying, well, I'm going to be on my own for 9 months, and I'm going to get to know myself. I mean, come on. I mean, I quit smoking, and when I quit smoking, I didn't sit there and say, oh, I'm going to stop smoking forever. I said, okay, Day 1, I'm going to do this for 24 hours, okay? Day 2. And so that's how I went through this process because I wanted to get to know myself, but I didn't want to scare the hell out of myself, okay? So I got to know myself, and as I realized that I was getting to know myself more and more and more and more, I realized now it was time to kind of incorporate the world back into my life, to spend time and to accept a possible date or not. But I knew that I was capable now of spotting people who are great people, but weren't at that same level. I was also getting better at spotting the reason why there were patterns in my life because of things that I had done, my actions, my emotions, and the past experience I'd gone through, and how I would put those past experiences on the current situation and, you know, either like screw up the relationship or be a part of the reason why the relationship basically blew up and fell into bits and blew up like a bonfire. And so I started realizing that. And so I was able to spot these patterns quicker and easier, and I was also starting to begin to stop the madness and stop the patterns. I realized that the patterns that we have throughout our life are created at a young age, and if they're not spotted and worked on early on, they create huge problems and havoc throughout our entire life, right? when we get into relationships, we tend to see what's wrong with the other individual. We see what's wrong with them, their problems, their issues, but we don't necessarily see what's wrong with us or the issues we bring to the table. And until we really get to know ourselves, we don't take responsibility for our actions and who we are. And we can't end those patterns because we see the other person as doing us wrong, when in reality, we're actually creating that pattern and finding these relationships to facilitate those patterns, and we don't even realize it. So you owe it to yourself to learn about yourself. You owe it to yourself to act, I call it date yourself. You know, make some dinner for yourself, watch a movie, read some books to intellectually inspire you, get to know what you really value, focus on yourself. If there's any stuff going on in your head, you know, constant gibberish, figuring out what that gibberish is. Is it negative in nature? Is it holding you back? Is it putting you down? Being cognitive of those things in your life, because remember, when we have a broken record, for example, that we're never going to create this, or we're not going to be successful in that, or we're no good, or we're not valuable, or, you know, nobody's going to ever accept us, we bring that record into a relationship, right? And so that's like the undercurrent. You know, that's the undercurrent in our relationship. And so when we come into a relationship with that and someone else comes in with their broken record, that's like the underlying inspiration for failure in the relationship, because neither one of us have dealt with our issues, right? And in order for us to have a solid relationship, yes, we go through ups and downs and peaks and valleys, but we have to understand what makes us tick, and we need to do our best to eliminate the baggage that we come in with, to be a clear slate, to be a positive individual that understands themselves, so that we can bring that in the relationship and facilitate growth within the relationship together. So it's a two-way street. So you owe it to yourself to learn about yourself and to get into a relationship and to realize what you bring to the table and to see your value, to accept yourself and to understand how valuable you are. And as you begin to learn about yourself and spend time with yourself, you'll actually see how cool you are and how valuable you are. And you'll actually respect yourself so much that you will actually look toward the relationships, and you can make decisions very quickly and easily on who really has it together, who's on that same level as you, who you can learn from, and who you'll just like to accept being friends from or being distant acquaintances with. And so I hope that this has helped anybody that's thought of doing one of those two, to begin to get to know yourself and realize that the most important relationship is yourself. And when you realize that and you find someone else that understands that they're important to you and they're valuable, two valuable people come together and understand each other. Hopefully this video has inspired you to not mope and to not rebound, and that you can find your true self by getting to know yourself and understanding what you value, spending time with yourself, dating yourself, and understanding that when we take time to get to understand ourselves, we're not missing the boat, we're not out of the loop of dating, but we're actually acquiring the knowledge we need to the next time we go into a relationship to quickly understand, is this something that we want to be in, or is this something that we're going to let pass us by and find someone else that's on our same level, understands us, but we understand them because we're on that same unconditional love level, but also that we figured out and we're responsible what we've been bringing into the relationship and ending our negative relationship patterns. Please share this video and live your true life today.